All right, perfect. The recording has started. Thank you everyone for joining today's Service Fabric Community Call number 68, whether you are on the call live or watching the recording. So today we're joined by the Service Fabric team. They have a number of topics that they'll cover throughout this presentation, specifically around SFMC. And so throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to either come off mute and ask your question so that we can capture it in the recording, use the raise hand feature so that you can be called upon, or just put your question in the chat window and we'll make sure that we get it addressed. And so without further ado, Divya, I'll hand it over to you to kick us off.
Thank you, Majella. Welcome to Tech Community Call. As mentioned, so I'm joined here by Abhay, Mike, Ankur from Service Fabric side. And today's session, I'm going to cover the key features of the latest Service Fabric release 9.1 CU2. After that, I'll hand over to Abhay, who will be talking about advantages of SFMC. Who would be going over the SFMC changes that the new changes that's coming in, and then followed by Ankur, who would be going over the portal experience. If you have any questions, as Majella mentioned, please post it in the chat window. We would come back to you once we have presented. So I'll start up with the Service Fabric runtime release that has already rolled out. And then the key feature that we had released in 9.1 CU2 was a support for .NET 7. Now, SF customers can now build applications using .NET 7 and can take advantage of performance improvements that came inherent with .NET 7, and also the developer, and also that increases your development productivity, like language features. So this would help you to build more efficient, resilient, and scalable microservice based applications. So that's the feature that we had introduced with the runtime release of 9.1 CU2. The next thing that I would like to call out is for the retirement and deprecation that's going to happen soon. So what Service Fabric team is calling out as like Ubuntu 18.04 will reach its 5-year and end of life support on April 30. So what we are requesting is we are asking anyone who is on 18.04 to move to supported versions of 20.04 so that it doesn't get a problem where we are not able to support the deprecated versions of Ubuntu post April 30. So that's an update from my side. I would like to hand over to Abhay, who would go over to the SFMC features.
All right, folks, thanks all for joining. Let me just start off by saying that this specific feature is for Service Fabric managed clusters. There's plenty of documentation out there on SFMC, and I might even add an extra slide with some bullet links if you guys are interested to learn more about SFMC. So this feature is essentially to make your application runtime and OS updates or upgrades faster. Faster in the sense of, well, what does faster mean? My specific one that I had spun up, I've got about a 25% increase in the amount of time it takes for application runtime and OS updates. So let's kind of dive right in. Just at a high level, first of all, let's just make sure we understand the concepts. There are two fundamental concepts for Azure Compute. One is upgrade domain and fault domain. Let's first start with a very quick understanding of fault domain. A fault domain is a physical unit of deployment for an application. The fault domain concept was introduced for Windows Azure to provide high availability services to reduce single points of failures, such as servers, racks of servers, switches within a data center. In a Windows Azure, a rack of computers is identified as a fault domain. Service instances allocation to a specific fault domain is determined by Windows Azure at deployment time and cannot be controlled by the service owner. By placing fault domains in a separate racks of computers, you separate service instances deployment to hardware well enough that it's unlikely all would fail at the same exact time, ensuring the appropriate availability. Next, an upgrade domain. So an upgrade domain is a logical unit of deployment for an application. The upgrade domain concept was introduced for Windows Azure to provide high availability services during an upgrade of an application. Windows Azure distributes instances of a role evenly, when possible, across a set number of upgrade domains. In this case, this feature decreases the number of upgrade domains, thereby reducing the amount of time it takes to do an application deployment, OS upgrade, and runtime upgrades. While that is a positive aspect of this feature, the con is that the lower number of upgrade domains means more risk, since you have more nodes being updated in a single upgrade domain. And if there's any failure, for example, an application failure, the rollback has to happen for all of those nodes within that upgrade domain. So those are basically the pros and the cons. Let's look quickly at the how do you do this? So the steps for an existing cluster that you have up and running, once you download your template, you need to update this one property called zonal update mode to fast. Once you do that and deploy that ARM template, you have a few options. First option is to add or remove a node, or option 2 is add a new property for each of the node types. We're actually trying to get rid of all this step completely, and that'll be something that we'll talk about in future community calls. So let's now just take a quick example, and I've already pre-done the works because it does take time. So as you can see, I've created an SFMC cluster here called AbateTemp2. Within that, we have a node type. There's a node type 1 and node type 2, each with about 30 node types in there. So once we update the fast zonal update to, zonal update mode to fast, and we do the deployment, which I have done. In fact, just yesterday, I did the deployment of the entire ARM template, and then I just did some verbose. So there's a bunch of updates on what's actually happening. I wanted to make sure that there was no failures. There was actually no failures, and then when you go down, you'll actually see that the deployment has succeeded. Once the deployment succeeded, I went ahead and added the node and then removed the node. And here is the here we go. Here is the output of that. So as you can see beforehand, we have essentially 15 upgrade domains, and now we've decreased it to 11 upgrade domains, and this is the process that's happening while the upgrade domain is actually the update is happening during that time. So in this case, we reduced by about 26% less nodes. So theoretically, you will have an increase, a decrease in your application updates, OS updates, and runtime updates. So this is one of the features that we have introduced here. It is live and can be utilized right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and now move on to the portal node, which Ankur is going to go quickly describe, and then we'll have Q&A. So Ankur, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Abhay. Yeah, so as you're already aware, the Service Fabric Managed Cluster are an evolution of Service Fabric Cluster Resource Model that streamlines your deployment and cluster management experience. While we are building an amazing set of features in the managed clusters, we also wanted to improve the overall developer experience there. As part of that initiative, we have built the node view experience on Azure Portal, which has been sought after by several customers, and which was a much needed functionality. So I'll give you a quick peek into what we are trying to build. Let me share my screen. So let me know if you can see the screen. So what we are trying to do is I've already created a Service Fabric Managed Cluster. And then this is the overview page in which user should be able to see all the metrics related to the managed cluster. And the node view experience, we would like to go to the node types tab. And we primarily have two node types here. And there is a tab nearby which shows the individual nodes into each for each of the node types. So basically, as part of this, a portal user can view a summarized list of all the nodes. And if you click on any of the node types, you would be able to see the properties of each node, as well as the user a portal user can also monitor the performance and health metrics for each node, such as CPU usage, network in and out metrics, disk read and write bytes, and available memory, etc. These performance metrics help to quickly find outliers and issues with your nodes based on these guest level metrics. And you can also toggle and change this data set for the 1 hour, as low as 1 hour to as high as 30 days. So you can change everything at the top, and then all the metrics would be shown for that time period. So this is primarily what we are trying to build, and we wanted to give you an early peek into this. This is still not released, but we wanted to get your feedback and wanted to know if this could be helpful to the customers. So this is the demo from my side. I think we can move ahead to the Q&A session now. I'll hand it over back to Abhay.
Yep. So thanks, Ankur. These are just a couple of features that we've introduced here. As we progress, we will have more features that we will be showing off, and the progression moving forward. We still have a continued focus on making sure that we are basically adding features that benefits many customers. If there's a feature that you're interested in and would like to discuss it, feel free to drop me an email, and I'll put my email address in the chat for you guys to discuss, and we can have a one-off discussion, or we can have a group discussion with the developer community as well within Microsoft, specifically for Service Fabric. And want to make sure, again, to reiterate, like we did in the last community call, that external customers still continue to be a priority for Microsoft Azure and SF. It is still going on. We still have improvements that we can make, admittedly, specifically getting back on GitHub repositories, so on and so forth. That is discussion that has happened about this exact same point, which we discussed in the last community call. And there is we're working on an on-call schedule to actually implement something where we have folks getting back to us on the community. We also want to reduce the number of channels that we have right now. We have a little bit too many. So Bhaskar, who's the lead of the SF PM side, is looking into that as well. And the plan is, hopefully in the next call or before that, we can actually announce that back. So I'm going to open it up for the remaining time for questions. We are, of course, see you guys asking questions in the chat, which is great, but feel free to ask questions now as well.
Well, I'd be happy to kick things off.
Please,
I guess
go ahead.
any updates on running SFMC on Linux in addition to Windows?
It's not going to happen.
Ever?
Right now, it's not even in the. We have a semester planning mechanism, and we just finished semester planning, and it is only for SFRP, which is the classical, and it remains there. We just don't have enough customers wanting it.
Sure, that's fair. I guess out of curiosity, why is YARP for Service Fabric only bound to Windows?
That's a great question. I don't know, but I think you were going to send a mail to Bhaskar. Could you send that mail over to me, and I can answer those questions? I'll get back to you on that.
It's a long email.
No, it's fine. I mean, just send it to me. I think Bhaskar's in many different places. So just send it to me with your list of questions and include the YARP question. I will include Mert and Antonio, who are the devs, and get them to get back to you.
Right. I appreciate it. Yeah, I sent him a big email. I never heard back.
Well, you should. So we got to make sure you get back.
Yeah,
I'm capturing at least the questions you ask here. So YARP on Linux is what you're interested in, okay?
Yeah, because I mean, the SFMC, the biggest perk of that is, it's definitely easier to set up. It's I really like the node upgrade paths. Yep. That's a lot easier than the kind of the older path. Mm-hmm. But there's just Windows is so expensive, especially at scale. And so any opportunity to cut costs and just run on Linux, especially since I guess from my perspective, there's no I lose chaos testing, but I'm not really using that anyway just yet. So I guess there's not anything that's really specific that I need on Windows today. That's if the whole system runs as is on Linux, I wouldn't miss Windows. So apart from just kind of these seemingly um, soft blockers of it's only available on Windows. That's kind of really the only thing that I guess it'd be nice to be able to run the managed on Linux and just kind of bring everything with me, because there's nothing that I'm using short of YARP that is, I guess, Windows specific. So just a persistent ask just from a cost perspective.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. I'll get back to you on that by working with two developers. I specifically don't own YARP, but I can get those folks together with you, or at least at a minimum, answer your question and get back to you on that.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, and that leads me to my follow-up is if there are any YARM updates, not necessarily on features, because it can do everything that I need it to right now, but more on, I guess, kind of timeline on it shipping with the cluster and maybe just turned on with a flag, as opposed to the kind of weird deploy via PowerShell, download as a repo, deploy blindly into the cluster today approach.
Sorry, I did understand your question. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, I guess just as I can turn on reverse proxy in the cluster by just
Sure.
setting the configuration, it'd be great to have the same thing to turn on YARP, as a system level service.
Oh, okay. Instead of having to like go and install the application of YARP and then
Yeah, because it's kind of funky now. Download as a repo and then just blindly push it into a cluster.
Okay.
So
basically, can it be integrated with basically an ARM template, right?
Exactly.
Or PowerShell.
Yeah, exactly. Or just it's just a configuration option that I specify. Just as I can set up reverse proxy, it'd be great to just say, and I want to turn on YARP, and it's just it's deployed with the cluster.
Gotcha. And I put my email address in there. Can you feel free to please pop that email or add me to it, and I'll set up a separate chat with Bhaskar to get back to you.
Absolutely.
This is John Krim. I just have a response to the request for managed, so I'm not Microsoft guy. I'm a guest. But so we've been using Linux Service Fabric for a while, and in general really like it, with a few, I guess there's like kind of a short list of problems we've run into that have kind of been longstanding issues. So we just kind of have worked around them. But what I would, I think the request for the managed service fabric, kind of an alternative to that would just be kind of a source code for good ARM templates for deploying the cluster and effectively providing equivalent functionality to the managed service. With the managed, you do lose some knobs. So like, for example, I can't see us migrating, we've kind of customized things enough. I can't see us kind of reversing course from the traditional Service Fabric template to managed, even though it makes some things nicer. So I just wanted to kind of provide that.
Certainly, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some things that I've increasingly noticed are missing. Yeah, you can't set your own management endpoint.
Right.
I guess the node upgrades are nice, and that's kind of like the single thing holding me here. But I mean, it's at such an extraordinarily high cost, especially at any reasonable scale, that it's really hard to stay unmanaged.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, I'll take some notes on here. And so you want just the source code of good ARM templates for the classical SF, I'm assuming?
Well, I was just saying, yeah, I guess my statement was, yeah, a directory somewhere in examples or something like that with, ARM templates for, example, Linux setup. Just because, I think it's tweaked, it's tweaked enough from the kind of out of the box setup that I think what's kind of been tested and not tested can take quite a bit of work. So I guess I'm just proposing that as a lower effort alternative to, managed service fabric for Linux.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
got
really, if there was even an example given of, here's how one might do a node, a rolling node upgrade, set the new node type, move everything over to it, slowly kill off nodes of the old node type until it's all been transferred and continue. Just something that's already out there like that, so I don't have to write it myself. That's really like the one thing that Managed gives me today. Apart from, of course, the simpler setup.
Right. The simpler setup is a one-time cost savings. I agree with you that
Exactly.
the higher value things are the things that are kind of more
Yeah.
frequent operations.
Yeah, I mean, I've maintained just so that I could easily switch between them. I maintain a bicep module for either approach, so it's not too hard to switch from one to the other. But especially with a lot of the investment in Managed, yeah, there's just a lot of useful stuff. So I mean, this fast deployment being just the latest and greatest. So I'd love to stick with Managed because it seems like that's where a lot of the new stuff is coming, but Windows is really expensive.
Yeah, and with just so that you guys know, like when we were just doing our semester planning, we had 42 items on the list. Note that a lot of them are backend improvements, but like a bunch of them were, or most of them were all about Managed, and only one feature for Classic.
Yeah.
So like that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to.
So I mean,
So the-
it's kind of the current future of Service Fabric on Azure, which is
Yeah.
nice, but it's an expensive feature.
yeah,
Mainly because of the Windows VM cost, right?
Yeah, exclusively because of Windows VM.
I got you. So if it was a Linux VM, you guys would be like jumping on SFMC like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because the Windows, excluding the they call them the bot licenses, it doubles the cost of the VMs. So you get the whatever that you bring your own license thing is, and that of course makes it cheaper, but it's still 1.4x the cost of just the Linux VMs. So it's a 50% increase for no discernible what do I get, because it's not like I'm logging into these Windows VMs and doing anything Windows specific. From my side, I'm deploying everything directly onto Service Fabric. The only thing I ever log into Windows for is to retrieve logs.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, great. So just a estimate, Whit and John, do you guys know like what's your number of nodes you guys have on Service Fabric, like approximate?
Our solution's not yet in production, but we'll launch on 26.
Yeah, like do you have an approximate number?
Yeah, I mean 26 nodes.
26 nodes. Okay, cool. Okay, that's good to know.
And
John,
I mean ours will scale with every customer, so that'll go up.
Yeah, we're pre-launch, so we have our stage environment using 1, and our prod, kind of, which is a pre-launch prod environment using 5. So that's it. We're it's we invested in Service Fabric because we want the ability to scale when we need to, but right now we're not using much.
Yeah, that's exactly why people use that Service Fabric. It's the stateful services and the rolling upgrades and the way it manages, and that's. I mean, to be perfectly honest, if you want a one-liner, that's why Service Fabric.
I mean, placement constraints.
And placement. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
we love to deploy too. Like we haven't had any, just being able to do all our upgrades with no downtime has just been fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, straight ARM template deployments are fantastic. The development environment is fantastic, except for all that auth stuff. But you'll see that in my email. And I mean, it's generally a fantastic experience. So I'm all about Service Fabric. I'm happy we made the choice to build on it a while ago.
Awesome. And this is good to see John is also chiming in on the Linux bandwagon. So, I am going to send a mail to the two main engineering managers and say, guys, look, we've got two customers in community call who are raving on Linux for SFMC and really wants it. What can we do? So, I will ask that question.
Hopefully we're
Appreciate it.
representative of a larger user base, but
I can imagine. I mean, especially I
I
can
think you
imagine
are. So,
Okay.
yeah, I've got to imagine
Well-
that everyone wants to save money.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean,
It's skill, right?
it also, I was going to add, it also kind of goes against where it feels like Microsoft you've been going, with agnostic, and there's been another huge push around Linux. Not to show the love here, it kind of feels like a bit of a slap.
You're right. You guys are dead on right. It's just that this is what we needed. We needed this kind of thing. I would implore all of you, please send me an email with your blunt statement. I will, we would highly want Linux on it. I will take all of that, wrap it in one email, and go send it to our partner engineering manager and have him see if we can prioritize it. So I would love you guys to do that. Please send me an email.
Fantastic.
Because this is the way I get things done. I put things in quotes from you guys, and I send it over and I write specs, and then we actually go and meet with the leadership of engineering and get them to put it in.
I guess to that end, of your 40-something items on SFMC, any chance we can get any preview of what's in that list?
Let me see what I can say. Give me just a second.
Because even if you can't tie a specific timeline to it, it's always nice to see what's in the pipeline.
Yep. Maintenance windows for SFMC.
Right.
That's something that we've been wanting to do, and we're at the last leg actually to get that done. That's one thing I can definitely say. And 1 second here, folks. Let me just pull up the list. Custom VNet is going to be another one. Support of subnet per node type is another one that's basically almost done. It's just a matter of documentation. So there's 2 or 3 that I've already told you guys. And I'm hoping that I can actually do some demos of those 2 and a couple other ones in the next community call.
Very exciting.
And if there's features you guys want, I mean, basically me, Ankur, and Divya are your one-stop shop. So if you guys want something, put it in email, send it over, explain why, and that would be a huge help for us.
Just I'll add one comment here on something that I've been wanting for a while, that other people may be able to echo. Sometimes putting issues on GitHub, which has been my kind of go-to approach in the past, doesn't get the eyeballs, just because, just like email, one item gets buried in a list of items. So one of the issues we had on Linux is, so we want to use, Linux managed service identity, of course, because it's the best security model, and also AAD authentication for administration, accessing the admin console and so on, and switch out from certificate-based authentication. And MSI and MSI and ADFS are not mutually compatible. You can use MSI, but then you have to use certificate authentication, or you can use ADFS, but then you can't use MSI. If any of that didn't make sense, I'm happy to explain it better. Anyway, I filed that issue a couple of years ago, and it was, I feel like it's something that is, I don't know, it's a pretty big one, just because, I think it's clear that the Azure Active Directory authentication is a better way to go. But we just haven't been able to make the move because of that.
Yeah, John, I'll get you in touch with our, I'll send you a mail on this one, and what I'll do
Okay.
is, actually, can you include that in the mail you sent so I can
Yeah.
forward it out to our engineering managers who does this,
Sure.
which will be our security focal engineering manager for SF. We'll ask him about this a little bit more.
Hey, John, if I can add a point here. So, Service Fabric is currently working, I mean, in the coming semester, we would be working on adding this ability to support managed identity. But I would, and also as Abhay mentioned, we are currently in the process of getting this multiple channel to one, and so that we can get that aggregated questions at one channel, and then we can start looking at those questions. But in the meantime, since you brought up this question, it would be great if you can send us an email so that we can have that in the prioritized, and then we can have better communication over it. So please do send an email, like what are the
So
problems.
send that
Sorry?
to Ave or
Yeah, sure. Send it to Abhay, send it to Ankur, or I'll share my email too. So you can send out an email. This would give attraction to everyone. Any one of us, if you send out an email, we will be able to get attraction on it.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for getting that point.
You mentioned managed identity. Is that managed identity during local debug as well?
Yes, this would be also with the developer experience. So this coming
Woohoo.
semester is yeah, that's where we are going towards.
Right. I've only been asking for that on every channel I could think of for a while, so I'm overjoyed.
Yeah, with just everybody can just you guys can just utilize me as your focal point of contact, and then I'll farm it out to all of the right PMs and or engineering managers to either A, answer your question, or B, if it relates to a feature that needs to be done, I will file it for the following semester. And if it's a strong case to actually add it for Gallium and some reprioritization needs to happen, then like the Linux one for SFMC, I will make that case to the engineering manager and see what they say if they can squeeze it in. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, is there any thought on any changes to the development models themselves? So any changes to stateless, stateful actors? Any new things?
I don't know of anything
Not
new.
that I'm aware of.
Divya, you would know. Yeah, Divya?
Not that I'm aware of. Do you have anything specific that you kind of have a thought on it?
Yeah, I've got a like I said, I wrote a long-winded email on this a while ago, so I'll send a list. But yeah, I mean, just kind of looking, there's I guess a whole world of things, and that Microsoft has a lot of actor frameworks at this point. There's Orleans, Coyote, Dapper, Service Fabric actors. It'd be really neat if there was like a next generation actor framework that kind of combined a lot of those. Service Fabric is nice because you can run any of those others individually on top of Service Fabric. It provides that runtime. But it could be really neat kind of seeing some of these ideas from these other projects, kind of merged into, an actor V2 sort of framework.
Okay.
Yeah, Divya, probably I'll farm that one out to you to go and figure out, okay?
Sure.
Thanks.
I got two questions. One I threw in the chat. I haven't seen anything. Is there any driver concerns about running AMD or running Service Fabric on AMD instead of Intel? I mean, I know there's drivers and things of that nature, which is why I wanted to throw it out.
Yeah, AMD 64 is something that we are thinking about, and to be perfectly honest, we want it done from a PM perspective, and we expect that to happen over the next 1 to 2 semesters. But it's going to take us a couple semesters, which is essentially a year, for us to quote release it out to the public.
Okay, so don't try to run Service Fabric on AMD then.
No, not right now. No, not at all, please. But it is something that we will start literally next week on, because it is prioritized for this coming semester and will bleed into the following semester. It'll take about a year for us to get from start to finish.
Okay, that's fine. I just was having conversations around cost management. I'm like, oh, AMD tends to be cheaper.
Yep.
And so that's why I brought it up. So I will let them know that we need to hold off on that. You mentioned
sorry, Ron, to interrupt you. This is AMD 64 on Windows is the priority right now. It is not Linux. I know you guys are gonna hate me on this, but I just want to be transparent with you guys.
we're running Windows, so that's fine for us.
Okay, cool.
Where it may not matter because we're also in the process of switching to AKS.
Oh, okay.
For what it's
But-
worth, I use an AMD Threadripper for local development. I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah, I think we may be trying to do most of the AMD. Maybe I'll make that as a comment. We can always try AMD in lower environments, and it sounds like it might work. I mean, technically, at the end of the day, unless there's something specific, it's still all x86 or x64, so the base is there.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right about that. It's just that officially from SF standpoint, Service Fabric standpoint, it is not supported, but I predict it will be pretty soon.
Sweet. The second comment is around the .NET 7 announcement stuff. This was before my time at the company. They were actually running .NET 5, and there was a brief period where it sounds like .NET 5 was deprecated and .NET 6 was not supported. So is there going to be better support around .NET 8, considering .NET 8 would be long-term support, and .NET 7 isn't?
Yeah, so .NET 8, the last that I saw was somewhere in the end of 2023 is when .NET 8 is going to be support. .NET 8 would be released by this end of the year. So we are actively tracking on the .NET 8, and then as soon as we have the release, so Service Fabric will also be working towards supporting .NET 8. Yes, that's our plan, and in the coming semester we already are keeping an eye on it.
But yeah, there's some people who sound like they want to maybe move the 7. My concern, of course, is that we'd be back in a situation where 7 is deprecated and 8's not supported yet. Put you in an awkward situation.
Yeah, I mean, Ron, net of it is that when the .NET team releases something and it's official, then we Service Fabric are a customer of it. We then try it out, make sure it works, and then we release it, right? So there's definitely
middleman of a middleman.
Right, that's just the way it is. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't release something until it's officially released.
Right.
You may get hopefully you guys get an inside private preview to certain things, but no, I understand you still have to test everything. Things change.
Yep.
Do y'all know anything about how Azure Functions does it? Because I guess for at least the last 2 releases, they've released with same-day support for the new .8s, or I'm sorry, the new .NETs.
I don't know how, in general in Azure, we can talk about Service Fabric, which is that we pick it up and we go forward. But I don't think we don't do the same day because we need the official build.
Sure.
I wonder if they're doing something more container-based.
Yeah, so I mean, actually, for what it's worth, I've no, go ahead.
I just quick question on that. So, is it so say for example, right now, Service Fabric runs on .NET 6, but .NET 7 does not. Can it run a host that it runs on .NET 7, but it's just but if you have both installed, it will just currently bind against the .NET 6 runtime. Is that should that work right now? I haven't tested that. I'm just asking if you know.
Divya, do you know that answer?
No. So can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so
I-
if I have a .NET 7 executable, so I want that to be my host that I put in my Service Fabric package. But I'm also running on Service Fabric, the current version, which is compiled against .NET 6. If I have both .NET 6 and .NET 7 on the host, I know that a .NET 7 app, when you start it up, it will run against, it will kind of pick the right one and run against the .NET 7 that's installed locally. Will that scenario work right now? A .NET 7 host, but where Service Fabric is compiled against .NET 6?
I'm not 100% sure. I need to check for this.
If I'm not Microsoft, but from like other .NET stuff I've done, I think it would depend upon whether or not you're using something specific around .NET 7 and whether it's a version that's supported in 6.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, especially when .NET 7 came out, I had to just push a deployment script update to push the .NET 7 runtime to all the VMs.
Yeah.
But then
And then
it worked fine.
Okay, cool. So that answers my
I mean,
question. I would think it would, but I just haven't tested it.
Yeah, even 5 to 6, 6 to 7, I never had any issues with it. The
Cool.
important thing being, of course, just the serialization concern.
I'd say ever since .NET 4, Microsoft has been pretty good on the .NET side about being a little bit backwardsy magically compatible. Like there was that hack around TSL that if you're running, you could build it in .NET 5, and even if you're running 4, if you include something like you still could have access to TLS 1.2. It just may not be officially in the IntelliSense.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate
it. While we're talking about .NET versions, right? Is there any update on what I assume to be a known issue that you can't debug .NET 6 applications, Service Fabric applications on a local cluster?
Dave, yeah, probably. Again, you would probably know this, right?
Did you say that .NET 6 doesn't work on the local cluster?
It does run, but from our testing, we weren't able to attach a debugger to the cluster. Just a plain old press F5 and it will deploy, and you can attach. It will attach to your services. That experience seems to be broken, for at least for us. I don't know if anyone else has seen that.
Are you trying to use Visual Studio 2022?
Yeah, it's 2022.
There's a note in the docs that says that you can only do it with Visual Studio 2019.
Okay, and is there any? I don't know if it works.
So so an upgrade there would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going for exactly, because of course we want to be on the latest stuff in terms of Visual Studio. I haven't tested .NET 7, but I can't imagine it has the same issue. Because for now, our policy is like that we would like to be on LTS versions of .NET for our code, and with .NET 3.1 being deprecated, that's becoming hard now. So our only option would be 5, which goes out of support, and we have to do the whole thing again. So would be great if at least LTS version, the tooling was working properly in the latest version of Visual Studio.
Okay.
I just linked the docs that mention this. Is that remote debugging is just not supported on VS 2022?
Yeah, that's not good. So we should put that as a bug to fix.
Thanks.
Okay. If you guys are typing in the background, just so that you guys know, I'm just taking notes as we go along. Okay, anything else? I look forward to seeing emails from each of you with requests. Please do send them, at least at a minimum. I'd like to start a spreadsheet with the list of things that you guys have questions on, especially a separate email on the push on Linux. The more you guys can give me that push, the better. Because I'm gonna have a meeting with our partner engineering manager on April 4th. And if all goes well, I would like to tell him about this and see if he can help us get some resources to get the Linux on SFMC prioritized. And then at least try to get back to you guys here within a couple of weeks on the status of your guys' questions. And I'll look for the big email from you as well.
Absolutely. I guess a quick question too regarding the recent announcement on the Service Fabric blog. Will all the release notes for each release be also, I guess, continue to be updated on GitHub in addition to on the Azure blog? I guess it wasn't clear where the new announcements are being posted at.
Okay, so the release notes would be at the same place in the GitHub. Previously, we were also posting in Azure blogs. So what Microsoft is telling us is that the release notes should not, the release note related information should not be existing in Azure blogs. So that would be going into Azure updates now.
Yep, and I'll work with Divya and team to figure out how to feed that into ACP, so you don't have to go search for it.
It's Service Fabric. I have plenty of links for it. That sounds great. Yeah, I see someone was just posted with the 9.1 release, so great. I just want to say thank you to the Service Fabric team for continuing to hold these calls and being receptive to all the community feedback, and just generally moving forward to continue to make this such a amazing product. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. In a singular thing is that we want to make sure you guys' experience is good, and on top of that, we want to make sure that we're providing new features. So, purely from a product management standpoint, which is what we are, we would love to hear about new features you guys want, bugs and so on and so forth. We just farm them out directly to the engineers, and then features is what we want to push on, especially the SFMC one that you guys talked about. But we appreciate you guys, all the feedback. Please keep it coming. Please keep it going. We do know about GitHub repository, and Divya, Ankur, and I will talk to our lead to see what we can do about making sure there's somebody manning GitHub repository. Right now, we just don't have that much PM bandwidth due to the recent, all the layoffs that you guys saw. And so we have to kind of figure that part out. So.
Sure, quite understandable.
Hey, folks, if there's no other questions, I think we're done.
Sounds good. Thank you all so much for joining. There is a survey in the chat window. Definitely tell us how you think this session went. Let us know what you want to hear next. As Abe and Divya and Ankur mentioned, definitely keep the questions coming. If you don't send them an email and you want to put your feedback into the Azure community, I'll definitely make sure that gets passed along to them as well, so that you are able to provide that feedback outside of this call and in between the calls. And so with that, thank you all once again for joining, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.